You're listening to Kerry Lutz's Financial Survival Network, where you get valuable information you just can't find anywhere else. To thrive in today's trying times, you need the Financial Survival Network, now more than ever. Go to financialsurvivalnetwork.com and get your free newsletter and gift. Financial Survival Network, now more than ever.
And welcome. You are listening to the Financial Survival Network. Well, gold prices, silver, gotten beaten up in the past few days, in the past few months. They're getting hit again today on September 26th, 2022. What is the reason for this in a world that becomes more and more tenuous? The social order breaking down all over the place, the EU getting ready for a major collapse. Shouldn't precious metals be going higher? Let's find out from Todd, Bubba Horwitz, BubbaTrading.com. Todd, it's great to have you back. So what do you make of this situation?
Great to be back with you, Kerry. What do I make of it? Look, let's remember one thing, that most investors, most people who try to get involved in the markets will always sell things that are stronger or that were stronger for them and making profits to hold on to dogs, okay, and to try to make a winner out of a loser. So I think you're seeing that obviously we've got dramatic inflation. The dollar is exploding higher, even though it buys a hell of a lot less. But that's not a great recipe for gold at the moment, as people are selling their own gold to try to support some lousy losing positions when you should be looking for strength. And I would certainly, I've been writing about this since gold was about 1,800. It looks like it's going to about 1,600 and maybe lower before we see some buying. Remember, we've got pretty much a wholesale sell-off of everything right now. And, if you listen to, Ray Dalio, who said the whole world's going to collapse. Well, we can see it happening in front of our very eyes, that everything is collapsing, that we're in a major depression, recession, whatever you want to call it. I just tell you, I don't care what they tell you. From an economist standpoint, look in your own bank account and you tell me how you're doing.
It's so true, Todd. I mean, yeah, it's hey, I've suffered this probably easier than many others. There was a guy named Howard Katz who wrote a newsletter called the One-Armed Economist, and he said in a depression or recession, winning needs to be redefined. Winning is not losing, right? If you can manage not to lose, then you're a winner. And when you compare that, think about it as a performance of your portfolio or your group of assets that you own, your net worth, compared to the S&P, which is losing chunks of value while we watch. So not being a loser makes you a winner.
I couldn't agree more. That's why we actually teach a hedging class, and it teaches you to buy into weakness is this, as long as you're hedging using derivatives to hedge your overall portfolio, knowing that your maximum risk is, depending on volatility, 3, 4, 5%. And certainly we can all live with that, knowing that we don't have to make a decision to panic or puke out of the market when we get even nastier sauce, because I think I've been calling for about a 50 to 60% sell-off for about the last 6 or 7 months. And I think that is where we're headed, if not worse. We are not set up for success. We are set up for failure. And a lot has to do with, in our country, the current administration. But basically, if you look at where all the trouble is, it's where all the socialist nations are that are running into all this trouble, trying to figure their way out of a mess. And you and I know one thing: you can never borrow your way out of debt. You have to earn your way back out. And that doesn't seem to be the answer, nor what they want to do, which is why we're seeing these major crises worldwide right now.
Right. And there's like no end to it. It's kind of like the little Dutch boy trying to put his finger in the dike, and then another hole pops up and another and another. So we just paper over it by printing more money. And like you said, borrowing our way to prosperity. And that just defies a fundamental law of economics, doesn't it?
Well, listen, first of all, you've never seen first of all, we know the Federal Reserve is a cartel, right? We know that they don't have our best interest as American citizens in our interest, nor do central banks around the globe have their interest. They are there to capture all the cash, which is why they continue to print. It allows them to even buy more assets while we sit here and suffer. The inflation, taxation without representation continues to be their number one goal as we sit back and have to take it. I mean, and when we have the simple solution, the United States could solve the problems of the world from a financial standpoint, not from some of the violence that's going on. But if we would just reopen up the shale and fracking and go back to being a net export of oil, it'd be amazing what would happen to the inflation that we're watching right now. But of course, that would be too simple. And when you have a simpleton as your leader, you can't make it simpler for him than you can as it is now.
Yeah, well, we never talk politics here, Todd, because this is a family show,
No, look, I can only speak to facts, okay, of what they are. I'm not trying to speak politics. I just say what I think, and that's the way life is.
Yeah, well, I joke a little. We generally don't talk politics because that's the way you get censored on social media. And really, the politics are irrelevant because it's the economic situation that really eventually will determine the political situation.
Well, I mean, again, the political situation is what has driven us into this economic position that we're in. If you want to go back to coal and start with a simpler thing of green energy and climate change, coal was in the United States, we cut out coal miners and boom, goodbye, no more coal. Well, right now we're using a record amount of coal, not us, but throughout the world, and they're building another 30% more coal-fired plants. So again, we can talk one way, but when China and India represent 40% of the world, okay, and they are never going to stop burning coal until there's a cheaper energy source. No. So your green energy is laughable if you believe in the climate change. And when we go to green energy, listen. You want to have an electric car? Great, good for you. But when you want to run it, tell them, give me a plan how we're going to get there and what it's going to cost me. In the meantime, don't shut off my main sources of energy so that I have to pay 3 times more than I should be paying for it.
Well, the green energy group is really into brown energy because if you go back to before the advent of the motor vehicle, the car, the automobile, in New York City, they had mountains of horse manure piled up. And that nobody was upset to see the horse go other than the stables and the saddle makers and the bridle makers. But nobody else was upset to see the demise of brown energy. And now they're trying to bring brown energy back.
Don't just survive, thrive. The Financial Survival Network.
Terra Resource Corp is a gold exploration company that has assembled a highly prospective district-scale land position on the doorstep of the city of Yellowknife in Canada's Northwest Territories. Terra is currently focused on expanding and delineating gold resources at the company's Yellowknife City Gold Project with a goal of discovering over 5 million ounces. With ready access to infrastructure and multiple high-grade gold discoveries, Terra is on track to re-establishing Yellowknife as one of the premier gold mining districts in Canada. Terra trades as YGT in Toronto and YGTFF on the OTC. For more information, go to goldterracorp.com. That's goldterracorp.com.
This is the Financial Survival Network. The information you need to thrive. Now more than ever.
Isn't that the truth? And, of course, we know that the food that we eat, the cows, every time they expel gas, it pollutes the air. And it creates more climate change. If you believe in
methane,
crap, So there's a lot of methane in a lot of the water you drink. So again, I think that what we are doing here is totally against all free market strategies, all capitalistic ways of doing business, and the true capitalistic way of life is just what really the United States was built on was capitalism. Which is, we went to war, I believe, because of taxation without representation back in somewhere around the year 1776, I think.
Yeah, they don't teach that in school anymore, Todd. But you know how that is. It's the self-immolation of the West. We don't even need to get into the merits of the war, the Ukraine war, whose fault it is, whatever. The fallout of it is further. Just another
I mean, the food shortages that we're going to have?
Yeah.
For the war that should have never started, if we had somebody who had any balls that would step up and say, this should not happen. No, we don't have that. That's going to, listen, we're coming into a major food shortage, Kerry. Okay. Now, United States, we won't suffer. We'll just pay more for it. I mean, next year when you're paying $10 for a loaf of bread, remember it's because you allowed this Ukraine war to go into place, because we've got bad weather, because certain countries that are major producers had bad crops. And we're going to have bad crops this year. We're going to be short. So, there's already food riots going on in the Middle East right now in what they call the breadbasket. And you think that's going to stop? People want to eat, and they want to eat bread. Okay. And without wheat, you're not going to have bread. Okay. And I know it's, matzah time right now for us, but at the end of the day, we know that bread is the answer. And Marie Antoinette gave him the old let them eat cake, and we know where she ended up.
Yeah. Well, food shortage that has been underplayed, underreported in China right now. They're having a massive drought. The Yangtze River has dried up to a trickle, and their rice crop threatens to be as much as 75% below normal, but in any event, 50% below. And that's why the Chinese are on a massive food buying binge, but they can't even buy enough now. What's going to happen when 100 million Chinese or 200 million can't get their 3 square meals a day?
They probably are lucky to get 1 square, but they're going to stand up and rise. There's certain things that get to individuals, and one is eating. Okay. People can do with less money. They can do a lot of things, but they cannot do, we don't have a magic pill yet that fills you up and gives you good health because you've been eating properly. And we continue to ignore the factors in front of us, the supply chain. I mean, you go to the grocery store and half the shelves are empty.
So true.
And there's no answer. Why? Because, again, fuel is too expensive. You've got too many manipulators around the world, around the globe. You've got China playing that phony COVID card, in my opinion, because I don't believe COVID was that big of a deal to begin with. If you just add the numbers together from COVID and from flu and cold before COVID, and now you add flu, cold, and COVID together, you come up with the same numbers. So where is the COVID? But yet we get to pay all this money and shut down a supply chain, which, again, all these things are having a dramatic effect on the economy and on the pocketbook of Americans and other people around the globe. But I worry about my people here and my family here, and things are a struggle.
Yes. Yeah. And your neighbors, your friends who perhaps didn't have the foresight to see what was going to happen here. So dollar is booming right now. It's around 113, I think, on the Dixie. And at some point that's going to reverse and it'll finally achieve its true value.
Actually, 114, just right now, 114. And look, but it buys a lot less. So the good news is a lot higher. The bad news, it buys a lot less anyways. Okay. But this does make the case, to go back to your original question, how I got off tangent here, is gold. Look, I believe in buying physical gold, and I think it's probably a pretty good buy here, even if it's going to go lower. As long as you're not buying it with leveraged money, money that you can afford, that you may have like in the bank right now, and you want to buy some gold. I would buy some gold. I think that you may need it as a currency again at some point.
What about silver? Same.
Always love silver. Listen, you got to be able to make change, right? Somebody gives you a 1 ounce gold coin that's worth $3,000. I got to be able to make change. I need some silver to change that up a little bit. So listen, I'm a fan of all the precious metals, and I believe that everybody should own a certain percentage in their portfolio of precious metals, but not paper metals. I'm talking about physical, because I don't believe, Kerry, that there's enough metal in the world to cover up all the paper that's been sold or been traded. And I think that's another problem that nobody discusses. But in my opinion, if everybody went to claim their gold, which they own through paper, they wouldn't find it.
Yeah, that would be like if everybody that bought a health club membership at New Year's showed up on January 3rd at their health club, they would have to call the National Guard in, because there's like 100 memberships for every member that shows up.
Probably less, because I go every day and it's empty.
Yeah, same here. One time I belonged to a health club it was a gym in New York City. It was the biggest one at the time, called the Vertical Club. And somebody told me they had tens of thousands of members, and maybe 100 or 200 showed up in a day. at least when I was there. And that's all you need. And then you have a rush for the door, confidence is lost, and then you find out who's swimming without a suit, right? As Warren Buffett would say. So, but the question really, many of you out there are wondering, I'm wondering too, Todd, I'm sure you are, is how much longer can the situation go on before something breaks?
Well, I think that this could go on for an extended period of time until finally somebody is going to go to war. Okay. And I'm not talking about across the globe. I'm talking about right here. I think you're looking at another potential revolutionary war or civil type war here. Look, I don't like to bring fear or panic into anybody, but we've had such a great divide now in our politics, which we don't talk here, but there's such a great divide of where we stand. When I grew up, I'm 65. When I grew up, it was more center, and there was a couple of issues that separated the two parties. And we don't have the chance. The problem is we don't have a chance to get somebody who's in the middle to be in charge here. So we have a monetary problem, and you get those that are true believers of one side and true believers of the other side. And the next thing you know, somebody's going to step up, because when you run out of your assets and you run out of food and you're starving, you'll do just about anything. And I think those are some very serious issues that we have to look forward to in the future.
Hey, as our good friend Gerald Salenti says, when you lose everything, you lose it. And maybe we're heading towards that. I hope not. Maybe saner heads will prevail, but I don't see any of them out there. So in the meantime, buy metals, right?
I think so. I mean, again, I wouldn't overload. I don't, I'm still an equity fan. I'm still a believer in America. Right. I mean, the stock markets in the history have gone up 8.5% year over year, obviously partially due to inflation, but partially due to other things. I think we're going to grow. I think you buy good, solid companies. But again, I think the biggest problem with the American investor is, they look for the lottery ticket. They hear all these crazy advertisements, how you get rich overnight, which is impossible and bullshit. Oops, sorry. And they also don't understand that you cannot over leverage to what you own. If you're right. Investing much more than you can afford, you're going to be forced to sell at some time. Leverage is a wonderful vehicle when it's going in your favor. However, when it's going against you, it's going to break you, which is why you see these dramatic swings, whether it be precious metals or whether it be the stock market or any other asset class. If you're over leveraged that asset, when you're going to have to sell it, you're not going to be happy or where the price you're going to have to sell it at.
Yeah, well, you lose your freedom. Once assets leverage, you potentially lose your freedom if you become a victim of market volatility. I think we'll leave it at that. So go over to bubbatrading.com, check out Todd's offerings. If you got a question for Todd, shoot us an email, kl@kerrylutz.com, and let us know what you're doing. Are you preparing? Do you have a store of food? How are you preparing for what could be very, very difficult times? By the day, we're realizing it. And don't forget, get your free newsletter at the site, financialsurvivalnetwork.com. Todd, always a pleasure. Thanks for stopping by.
Thanks, Kerry. Always a pleasure to be with you.
Thanks for listening to Kerry Lutz's Financial Survival Network, your solution to today's trying times. For the latest, go to financialsurvivalnetwork.com. Financial Survival Network, now more than ever.